I would like to ask Mr. Kyle Buott, President of Halifax, Dartmouth, and District of Labour Council to step forward, please.
Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. It's unfortunate, but very important that we all gather here today. What we're seeing in Iran right now is some of the worst violence since the Islamic Revolution. We're also seeing mass arrests of trade union leaders and activists, and across civil society of activists that are promoting change and looking towards the co-opting of a grassroots movement that is emerging in Iran. It's important that we gather here today as both the Iranian diaspora, Iranian exiles, and people from across the world who believe in human rights, freedom of political association, and solidarity in order to make the case against the Iranian regime. But today, brothers and sisters, we also need to raise our voices in opposition to right-wing politicians across the world at this point, led by the United States and Israel, who are calling for this grassroots movement to be co-opted and used to further a strike on Iran as part of an imperialist project. It's absolutely unacceptable, and we cannot allow a grassroots workers and citizens movement in Iran to be co-opted by right-wing politicians to move towards a war against Iran. 6.5 years ago, the global community said no to war with Iraq. Today, we also need to say no to a war with Iran. I'd like to close by reading some comments from the Canadian Labour Congress and a letter that the Canadian Labour Congress sent to the Iranian embassy in Ottawa. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because, as some of you will know, the President of the Canadian Labour Congress's letters can get quite long. So I'm just going to read some excerpts for you. The Canadian Labour Congress today joins groups from around the world to communicate our deep concern over the turn of events related to the recent Iranian elections and its aftermath. We urge your government to act swiftly in establishing a transparent and legitimate election process in your country, one where truly elected candidates are chosen to represent the people. Last week in Geneva, the International Labour Organization placed Iran on a short list of countries that consistently violate internationally recognized standards for the protection of women, children, religious minorities, as well as workers and trade unions. The Canadian Labour Congress was among those who provided testimony to the special ILO review of Iran, and we join the international community in asking you to stop the repression of your citizens, especially those who speak up to defend human rights and dignity. Today, there are over 10 trade unionist leaders detained in your prisons, and they're living testament to your government's disdain for the right of workers to organize and to be represented by trade unions in Iran. These trade unionists join a long list of others who in the past have resisted the exploitation, persecution, and imprisonment of citizens who were from different sectors of Iranian society. The recent May Day rally in Tehran, where over 150 people were either violently attacked or arrested by the so-called security forces, is illustrative of the repression that has reigned in your country for well over a decade. Meanwhile, the immediate and unconditional release of all trade union prisoners, including the remaining detainees of this May Day arrest, is imperative. We need to hear from the leadership of your country that Iran intends to join the international community in respecting the freedom of thought and expression. In failing to do so, the Canadian Labour Congress wholly endorses the organization of rallies and public demonstrations in Toronto and elsewhere in Canada to support such an outcome. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters.